Hey, hey, what's up, stay-at-homies? I hope you are doing great. Today I am actually really excited about the project that I'm going to show you. So you might remember last week we made some little puppets, maybe some stick puppets or finger puppets. I made a couple characters from Peter and the Wolf. You might have done the same or done your own thing. And today I'm going to show you how to make a little miniature theater for your puppets out of a cereal box. It's kind of a big project, so get ready. You're going to need, obviously, your cereal box that's empty, that you have permission to use. You're going to need some basic supplies like scissors. You'll probably want a ruler and a pencil to make some nice straight lines, some glue, maybe some tape. You'll probably want something to decorate your theater at some point, paint or markers or crayons or whatever you have around. So let's get started. All right, so if you've got your cereal box, that's awesome. What I'm going to start off with is just kind of opening my cereal box up. I'm going to rip some of the flaps open carefully. And I'm kind of going to flip my box inside out, because the cardboard on the inside of the box will be a lot easier for me to decorate than this kind of glossy, shiny part on the outside of the box. So carefully, without ripping, I'll do my best. Open up my cereal box. All right, there we go. So I did rip a little bit of that inside cardboard, but it shouldn't matter too much. Now, sometimes on the inside of cereal boxes or whatever kind of box you're using, sometimes there's printing on the inside. Like this is a recipe for Kellogg's Rice Krispie Squares. If anyone wants to make some for me, go right ahead. So I need to figure out which part of my cereal box is going to be the front, where I need to cut out my window where all the action takes place. So I've got my cereal box opened up like this. Now this flap is actually going to fold out and become almost like a little base in the front. And then I'm sort of imagining how this is going to work as I go. I'm imagining the window cut out here where my puppets will show through, the roof of my theater here, and then this is the back. So that kind of tells me a few things that I need to do. So first of all, I'm going to decide what I want my base to look like. Now, I managed to rip quite a bit of that cardboard when I was opening up my cereal box, so I might just kind of follow that and just clean it up a little bit. So if I follow that line, I'll end up with a nice curved shape that I could paint green if I want it to be grass or something like that. Then I need to think about how big I'm going to want my window to be in the front. Now, when I cut my window, I'm going to use the ruler and the pencil to make some nice straight lines, and I am going to leave a bit of a border around the edge so that the cardboard doesn't become too flimsy. If I make the window really big and I am cutting out all this cardboard, it loses some of its structure and it might not stand up quite as well. So I am going to flatten this back out so that I can draw my window. All right, so I did some measuring. I figured out how big I wanted my window to be, and I know it's kind of hard to see because it's over the printed part, but I've got my pencil lines marked out. So the next step is for me to cut this window out, and I want to be really careful around the edges. I don't want to accidentally cut too far and go into my sides. So this part is a little tricky. I'm going to start in the middle and work my way to the corners with my scissors so that I have some flaps that I can cut off. Alright, so I've got my window all cut out, so this gives me a bit of an idea of what my theater will look like. Next I'm going to cut this shape that I drew for my front flap. There we go. Now, before I kind of reattach my box back together, I have one more thing I need to do with my scissors. This one's a little bit tricky, so you might want to ask an adult for some help. I don't really want this Rice Krispies picture to be the background for my puppet show. It just isn't really the vibe I'm going for. Maybe you are doing a Rice Krispie themed show and you're good with it. Personally, I'm not. So I'm going to create a way to have a different background, and it's actually going to be one that I can change. Here's what I need to do. I need to attach some paper clips along this seam. So that means I'm going to need a couple tiny little cuts right along this edge. Okay, so if you got an adult to help you with these tiny little cuts, then you'll want to use a couple of paper clips like this. So what you need to do, if you can see where my little cuts are here, I'm going to carefully slide that paper clip through like that so that it kind of catches one side here. And then the other side, of course, is on the inside. Like I said, this step is a little tricky and it's not totally necessary. So if you don't have an adult around to help you, or if they're busy working or whatever, you don't have to do this step. But it definitely does add kind of a cool element to your theater. Now I am going to be putting a piece of tape over these just to secure them in place. Now that's about it for cutting. So the next thing I'm going to do is kind of reassemble my box so that it's closed up and it's starting to look a little bit more like a theater. So it's kind of like I'm turning it back into a box, but it's just flipped around. I'm going to use a little bit of glue. I'm going to secure the flaps on this side and the flaps on this side, but I'm going to leave this kind of curved flap that I cut alone. I'm not gluing that anywhere. Now to make mine a little more secure, I'm actually going to add a little bit of cardboard to the ends just from another box that I'm recycling. And I'm just kind of standing it on its end so that I can press down and kind of smush that glued part together a little bit more. So I could also add a few pieces of tape inside if I was a little concerned about things coming undone, or even a staple wouldn't hurt. Oh, here's Gretchen. Better put the lid on the glue so she doesn't get stuck in it. All right, so I've got my one side closed up. I'm going to close up the other side now as well. All right, so I've got my ends all closed up. I went and found my tape so I could make things a little bit more secure. And as you can see now, it just kind of stands on its own. So it's got this hole on the side. I've got my window in the front, and of course those paper clips that I added for my scenery, which we're going to get to. So the next thing I'm going to do is decorate the outside of my theater. Now the benefit of flipping this around so that it's inside out is that I can now use markers or paints or crayons right onto my theater. I don't have to worry about gluing anything or sticking anything onto it somehow. If I had left it with the glossy side out, markers don't work so well on that. Paints might, they might not. It depends what kind of paints I have. So this sort of ensures that whatever supplies I have will work. So I am going to paint my theater. I haven't decided yet what colors I'm going to use, so I guess you'll just have to find out. All right, so I've chosen some colors. I've just got acrylic paint. I picked these up from the dollar store. I think this one might be from Michael's craft store, but acrylic paint is nice and thick and it doesn't take too long to dry, so it's a good one to use, but whatever kind of paint you have, if you are painting with me, should work. I've got my placemat, my table covering so that I don't make a huge mess. Acrylic paint does need a good shake before you pour it out. And I've just got an old sour cream container lid that I'm going to use. I've just painted the front yellow. Now, I could let it dry and then do a second coat. You can just slightly see the words through the paint a tiny bit. I don't actually mind because I'm going to be adding some designs with another color, so I don't think it'll be noticeable anyway, but I could go ahead and do that if I wanted to. I'm going to leave this to dry for a few minutes. I'm going to clean up my little mess from my yellow and green and then finish up my designs. All right, so my yellow paint is all dry and I'm going to go ahead and add some little designs. Now, you could make it as complex or as simple as you want. I could leave it just like this. I'm not going to do too much. I just want to add a little bit of interest around the edge of my window. And I've got this nice blue paint. Using some of my favorite colors today. Now here's a little trick to make dots out of paint. Rather than trying to make circles and kind of making a mess with the brush, I'm actually going to flip it over and use the end of the handle. Around to the side over here. Now, doing it this way does leave a little bit more paint, so it might take a little bit of extra time to dry. But you can see, gives me really nice, perfect little dots. So I've done the four corners there. I'm going to go ahead and add some more in between. So while my yellow paint was drying, I just drew, just using marker, a little forest background. Now remember those paper clips that we put in our theater? they allow me to slide in a picture like that, and it just catches on the paper clips. So you can't even see them. And look at that. It's like magic. So fun. Now, if I'm doing a story where part of it takes place in the forest and part of it takes place somewhere else, I can pull that scenery out, and maybe on the other side of the paper I have something else, or I've got a different piece of paper I can just slide in. So cool. Now, when I'm ready for the show, I would get my puppets. I would put my theater on the edge of a table or something like that. That way I can carefully reach in. La, 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 la. Oh, it's so cute. So of course your puppet theater works with your own puppets that you make, but you might also have other puppets. So I have these tiny little finger puppets that a friend of mine gave me for Christmas or my birthday or something a couple years ago. How fun is that? I could also use some of my toys. Dee 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 dee. Woody's Roundup. There's a snake in my boot. Well, I hope you had fun making a miniature theater with me today. I'd love to see a picture or even a little video if you're putting on a play, so go ahead and email me. That's it for me. Until next time, be brave, be kind, and wash your hands. Bye.